Hi, Dr. Greger, and welcome to the GI Health Summit. Thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here as always, anytime for Chef AJ.
Well, thank you, Dr. Greger. Dr. Greger, you were an expert on the Truth About Weight Loss Summit. And after the summit, we sent out a questionnaire to the participants asking them how we could help them eat healthier. And the biggest complaint they had is that when they tried to eat a plant-based diet or even eat fruits and vegetables, they got so gassy from the fiber, bloated, distended, or they had myriad GI conditions that they said they couldn't eat a high fiber diet. So I'm here to ask you, how can we help these people with all these GI conditions from mouth to anus know that this diet is not only going to help them, but it's actually optimal for their gut health?
Yeah, so I mean, if you've been, slathering your insides with cheeseburgers and milkshakes your whole life, and all of a sudden switch to whole healthy plant foods, you are taking in, even if you're taking in a fraction of the fiber for which our bodies were designed to eat, we don't have the bacterial machinery in our colon to handle it. So while our bodies were designed to take in excess of 100 grams of fiber a day, which is like 6 times what Americans tend to eat, 3 times even what the recommended minimum daily intake is, that was because we had evolved this wonderful gut microbiome to be able to of fiber-eating bacteria. And then they take the fiber, they eat them, produce these short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which then get absorbed into our system, have anti-inflammatory effects, immune-boosting effects, improved cognitive effects, just remarkable effects. But if you don't eat the fiber, or you don't have the good gut bugs to properly eat that fiber, you're not going to get the benefits. And so what you have to do is you just have to start slow. You don't have, I mean, basically, if you eat a lot of meat all day, then you have meat-eating bacteria, which produce actually these, negative things like TMAO from carnitine or choline from eggs. And so you actually have the wrong kind of bacteria in your gut, and they're producing bad things from what you eat. And so what we want is we want to foster the growth of these fiber-fermenting bacteria that by feeding them prebiotics, which is fiber and resistant starch found in whole healthy plant foods, particularly legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils, and whole grains, particularly whole intact grains like groats. But because we need to slowly build up that capacity, we may need to start slow. And so for people, they get bloated, gassy. Actually, most people can do fine. Just switching right over, going cold turkey. But for people that do, then they just have to slow down. They have to slow the transition so their good bacteria can catch up.
Thank you. So do you think eating a whole food plant-based diet can ameliorate some of these common GI conditions, all the way from reflux all the way down to constipation?
Oh my God. In fact, not only, even serious life-threatening GI complaints like inflammatory bowel disease, like Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel disease, by eating an anti-inflammatory diet. No wonder they're the most effective treatment that have been described to date. We're talking, 80, 90% remission rates after 2 years from Crohn's disease from the Japanese study of plant-based diets. They've since, that same research team is now working on ulcerative colitis, see the same amazing results. So people, be not having to do surgery, have their colon removed, all because they just started eating healthy. And so, yeah, we can go down from dental health to esophageal health with reflux, gastroesophageal reflux disease, which, can be caused by hiatal hernia because straining on stool can actually push part of your stomach up through the diaphragm into your throat. And then you have this acid bath, which can increase your risk of esophageal cancer, on down through reducing our risk of intestinal cancer and irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel, hemorrhoids. This is, that's our number one contact with the outside world. It's not what we breathe, not what we touch, but actually what we eat, because of all the little microscopic folds. It's like 2,000 square feet of surface area in there. So that's how we interact with the outside world. And so no surprise, you should have such a dramatic effect on how our gut works.
There's a lot that can go wrong from top to bottom. You mentioned straining at stool. It's interesting, Dr. Greger, because I know so many people, even people that claim to eat a 100% vegan, healthy diet, that are still constipated. Why do you think that is? And for plant eaters, how often should we be pooping? And what should our poop be like?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people that, are eating healthy say, oh, I don't have to worry about fiber, eat lots of fruits and vegetables. There's actually not a lot of fiber in fruits and vegetables. Why? Because they're water, right? Fruit, like 80% water. Some vegetables are 90% water. It's basically just you're eating water. And so, I mean, the richest sources of fiber are in the drier plant foods, like the whole grains and the legumes. So if you actually did a calculation for you how many grams of fiber you're eating, you may be sorely disappointed. You think you're eating healthy, but boy, you could eat a lot healthier. I've got lots of videos talking about proper bowel function, talk about there's a range of kind of normal frequency and consistency, but I do talk about all the optimal ranges.
Right, nice. So are there certain foods we can be eating to help us prevent colon cancer? And are there certain foods that Americans are eating that are possibly even causing it?
Not just possibly causing it, but most certainly causing it. Processed meat. So bacon, ham, hot dogs, lunch meat is a group 1 carcinogen, according to the IARC, the official World Health Organization body that determines what is and is not cancer causing. Group 1 carcinogens, that's the highest level. So that's we are as sure that processed meat causes cancer, specifically colorectal cancer, as we are that cigarette smoking causes cancer, or plutonium causes cancer, or asbestos causes cancer. And so we know these are known human carcinogens. We try not to smoke around our kids. How could you possibly send them to school with a bologna sandwich? I mean, these foods cause cancer. What kind of cancer do they cause? They cause colorectal cancer, also associated with increased risk of pancreatic cancer and breast cancer, on down the list. But the best evidence we have is for colorectal cancer. Now, something like a burger, unprocessed meat, is just a probable human carcinogen. It's a group 2A carcinogen. So it probably causes cancer. They're talking about colorectal cancer in people, so we probably shouldn't eat it. But we know processed meat causes cancer. And when they talk about processed meat, it's not just red meat. So like turkey deli slices or something, poultry as well, will be considered processed meat. And so those are foods that cause it. I'll have a number of videos about things that may reduce risk, such as the spiced turmeric, beans, legumes, and any high fiber foods, and foods with lots of resistant starch can produce those short chain fatty acids, which feed the lining of our gut. What are some other good anti-colorectal cancer foods? Colorectal cancer is the second leading cancer killer of men and women combined in the United States. And that's I think people are surprised to learn that. But if you're going to die of cancer, number 1 is lung cancer. So it kills more women than breast cancer. But we know what we can do about that. So in non-smokers, what's the leading cancer killer? We scratched the first one off the list. All right, what's the leading cancer killer among non-smokers? Colorectal cancer. You don't want to die of cancer. What do you have to do? You have to reduce your consumption of meat, increase your consumption of whole, healthy plant foods.
Terrific. I know a lot of people that are vegan that still get reflux. As a matter of fact, my husband used to have it until he went to a whole food plant-based diet. What causes reflux and what can we do to improve it or reverse it?
Yeah, so there's a sphincter at the bottom of our gullet or our esophagus before it empties into the stomach. And it's a sphincter that closes this muscular ring. So when we eat a meal and we have this acid being secreted, we have this acid bath in our stomach, it closes off so no acid leaks back into the esophagus or back up into our throat. But there are some foods that can actually loosen, that can actually relax that sphincter and allow acid to creep up. And primarily, so there's some things like peppermint that can do it, a chocolate can do it, but any kind of fatty food can do it. So fat relaxes sphincter. You can give people, you put tubes down their throats so they don't even know what they're eating, and you slip them some, broth, or you slip them some broth with some oil in it, and then you can measure actually with a little a pressure gauge what the sphincter is, and you see this nearly instantaneous relaxation of that sphincter when just adding a little oil down to that mixture. And so that's why putting people on a low-fat diet can reduce reflux. And so, yeah. And you can not overeat. There's other things you can do. Worst comes to worst, if you have it at night, you can actually prop some bricks under the head of the bed, and so you're kind of lying at an angle so gravity can help. But then you can get tested for, again, ultrasound, look for something called this hiatal hernia to make sure that the stomach is where it's supposed to be. There's some other things that can do it, but just eating smaller, more frequent meals, low fat, and cut out some of those kind of classic triggers. And you can keep your own diary to find out, wow, why do some meals give me reflux, the heartburn, and some meals don't? Oh, it was the this, or it was the that. And then you just, some people, tomatoes can do it. Some people, green tea can do it. The tannins in green tea can irritate people's stomach. So you just got to find out.
It's interesting that you mentioned how just that little bit of oil made a difference. And most Americans are eating a very high fat diet, animal products, oils, dairy, for example.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's something it's one of the first things I try. And it's amazing. I mean, so that could be the first meal that they haven't had heartburn after. And it could be the same meal that they're eating, but just cutting out the fat.
Very interesting. Thank you. I know so many people, including vegans, that have IBS or IBS and SIBO. This is so prevalent. Why do you think this is? And how can we help them?
Yeah, so I have a bunch of videos coming out on SIBO. And irritable bowel, and talk about FODMAPs, and go through the whole thing. So I mean, it's important to recognize that even the investigators that came up with the FODMAP diet say it's only temporary because of the adverse effects on your microbiome of cutting out these healthy probiotics for any long period of time. And shows that again, it's just a matter of not so much the location of the bacteria, but the makeup of your good bacteria. And we can change the makeup of our bacteria by what we eat. We foster the growth of some bugs; the bad bugs die off. So it's really just about eating healthy foods. Although there certainly are medical conditions. I mean, if you're on a healthy diet and you still have symptoms, then you should get tested and make sure that you don't have some kind of non-diet related disease that's contributing to your symptoms.
Yeah. One time we had dinner together and you had a kiwi fruit and you didn't peel it, and you said, no, you can eat the skin. And what I've learned from some of the experts in this summit is that it's the skin of the kiwi fruit is actually very good for people with certain GI conditions.
I did not know that myself. I just thought it was tasty.
Yeah, well, but you had mentioned, I think in one of your videos, that kiwi fruit was particularly effective for people with IBS.
Oh, right, for IBS with constipation, I think. Right, but I didn't know it was the skin. In fact, I presume in the studies actually took the skins off, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm going to send you some with the skin that I eat. It's dried, and it's actually, I don't have constipation, but it's delicious, and I think you'll actually like it.
Why don't people eat more dried kiwi fruit? That sounds delicious.
I am going to send you some, so I think you'll really like it.
Or you can buy it commercially.
You buy it commercially, yeah. And I learned that actually from one of the registered dietitians.
Do you just look on Amazon?
Yeah, I'm going to get you some.
All right.
As a thank you gift for being on the summit.
All
so
right.
Very good. So
are they crispy or
they're not crispy? They're chewy, and they're actually quite tart, but they're good. They taste almost like a sweet tart candy.
And no added sugar?
No added sugar.
Let's do it. I'm hungry.
Great, terrific. And you mentioned cayenne pepper also might be good for irritable bowel.
Yeah. Well, it's symptomatic relief because you basically, for the same reason that that you can use it for joint pain, this capsaicin cream, which is kind of that spicy compound within hot peppers. So basically, pain is transmitted through these special type of nerve fibers through a neurotransmitter called substance P. And so each nerve has a stored up quantity of substance P, and every time it tries to transmit a pain signal, it releases a little bit of it. But you can actually deplete your nerves of substance P such that they have to make more from scratch, and that takes a while. And so you actually lose your ability of your nerves to transmit pain signals. All your other nerves are still active, so you can say it's not like you're numb, but you just dramatically cut down on the pain. You say, well, okay, all we need to do is cause myself enough pain to deplete our substance P. Well, that's not good because things that cause pain cause damage. If only there was a way to basically activate those fibers, have them dump their substance P without actually causing any damage. And that's what hot peppers can do. It kind of fools your body into thinking that there's damage, thinking that there's burning, and so it releases all the substance P such that as a cream, you can use it for all sorts of painful conditions. And you can also use it internally to basically deplete your pain nerves, your pain fibers of the substance, so they just can't transmit those symptoms. Now you're still, whatever's going on is still going on. You're just not feeling it. But hey, that's good if you're in pain.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you. How do substances like caffeine and alcohol affect our GI tract?
Oh, well, caffeine and alcohol. Well, so caffeine certainly has a laxative effect. And so, someone who's dealing with diarrhea should cut down their caffeine intake. Alcohol, alcohol increases risk of colorectal cancer, as well as breast cancer and a number of other cancers at a number of other sites. In fact, dozens of sites we now know. So alcohol is also a group 1 carcinogen. We know it causes cancer. Why would you do it? Why would you take anything that causes cancer? But beyond that, I'm trying to think, well, increased risk of stomach cancer and oral cancer and kind of cancer all the way down. And of course, your liver is part of the digestive tract. So you can get scarring, this fibrotic scarring of your liver with excess alcohol consumption, fatty liver, too much alcohol, too much, added sugars. Yeah.
Oh,
Not a good idea.
I agree. What about
It's good for alcohol sanitizers for your hands. That's about it.
Great. What about all these artificial sweeteners that the people are using? Not just the Splendas and the saccharides, but stevias, erythritols, all these sugar alcohols. How do they affect our gut?
Really interesting. So, like the Splenda Corporation, likes to brag how sucralose, their product, does not get absorbed into the system. So people saying, oh, I have headaches or something when I eat Splenda, the company's like, well, it's not the Splenda because it doesn't really even get absorbed into your system. But yeah, that's the problem. It doesn't get absorbed into your system, so it all stays in the digestive tract to muck with your colonic flora. And indeed, you do see changes in your microbiome when you eat these products. But and so then that can result in other symptoms, but it's kind of indirectly as opposed to direct effects. But in terms of these other low-calorie sweeteners or no-calorie sweeteners, the biggest problem is with blood sugar control. So throughout the day, even if you eat an artificial sweetener, even a harmless artificial sweetener like erythritol or allulose or monk fruit, you actually increase the blood sugar spikes of subsequent meals, such that over the day you actually have higher average blood sugars overall, even though you just skipped adding sugar to something. And so I would encourage people to not try to fool their system by eating naturally sweet things like sweet potatoes and fruit. And so the amount of calories corresponds with the amount of sweetness. And so your brain's kind of sweetness calorie thermostat doesn't get undermined, because there's this whole, I talk about in How Not to Diet, I've old this chapter about how your body, as soon as sweetness hits your tongue, you have this response. You start pumping out insulin. You start pumping. Your body is readying for this rush of sugar coming in because it knows it's coming. It can't wait because it needs to be able to deal with it. So as soon as sweetness hits your tongue, they're like, it's this much sweetness. Oh, we've known from the past that you eat this many blueberries. We know how much this much sugar, so this is how much insulin we have to release. Well, when you take something like monk fruit, it tastes like this many blueberries, but actually has no calories, no sugar at all. But wait a second, your body just released all this insulin and totally overshoots it. And so then your body's like, oh my God, I must have been totally screwed up all these years. Actually, this much sweetness, actually only need this many blueberries. But then next meal, you actually eat this many blueberries. And your body's like, wait a second, I thought this much sweetness meant only this much sugar. And then you get these exaggerated spikes, and it kind of mucks with your process.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sure that's important for people trying to lose weight as much as people with their gut issues. So thank you for saying that. I know you've done some videos on a couple of substances that some people ingest, carrageenan and nutritional yeast. Can you explain why for some people those might not be a favorable thing to include?
Oh, yeah. So for people with inflammatory bowel issues, may want to stay away from carrageenan. In fact, it was that video on carrageenan that caused Silk, the producers of Silk soy milk, to actually switch from carrageenan. It was very sweet. One of the employees of the company was like, it was your video that actually got us to switch. Awesome. But basically I didn't say everyone should avoid it. I just said if you had inflammatory issues of the bowel, it may be a good idea. So for nutritional yeast, there's only two conditions for that basically for which you should not eat nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast is wonderful. It has all sorts of beneficial effects, including immune boosting effects. So, marathon runners who take a little nutritional yeast actually significantly cut down upper respiratory tract infections, which you tend to get after overexerting yourself and knocking down your immune system. All sorts of benefits. Children, decreased risk of upper respiratory tract infections, on down the list. But there are two conditions: Crohn's disease and another autoimmune disease called hidradenitis suppurativa, for which you should avoid all yeast, and that includes nutritional yeast, brewer's yeast, and baker's yeast.
Right. So you mentioned Crohn's disease. If somebody has Crohn's disease or maybe ulcerative colitis, is there maybe a modified version of a whole food plant-based diet they should follow?
They should eat. It's even more important that they're eating a whole food plant-based diet. Now, if you have some kind of stricture, so some people who have a long-term Crohn's disease, they've had multiple surgeries on their intestines, may have strictures at the surgical sites, or for other reasons, this fibrosis, this scarring that narrows the lumen, narrows the opening within the intestine, such that it's really important to chew well. So for people that, if you or I don't chew well and sit down to a big kale salad, no big deal. But if someone with a stricture somewhere down their small intestine eats a big kale salad without chewing properly, then they can actually get an intestinal blockage, which may require surgical intervention. I mean, how embarrassing would it be to be like, yeah, I had to get surgery because I ate too much kale? Like, that's just not the way you want it to go. Now, so in fact, some people have have become so scarred after surgery that they have to eat their greens in like smoothies. But I mean, so it's the same foods, but just maybe eaten a little differently.
Right. What about people that experience frequent belching?
Well, belching is usually swallowing air. And so, they say you can cut down on carbonated drinks, you can not use straws, you not talk while you're eating. There's a couple little things. I have one video, I think, on belching. talks about some of the things you can do. But yeah, it's mostly, it's not like your body is creating gas from the food you eat, like with the flatulence. It's just you're swallowing air, and there's ways you can eat differently where you just swallow less air.
You've done some videos on peppermint tea and peppermint oil. How can they be helpful with people with different GI problems?
So peppermint has this remarkable effect of relaxing smooth muscle. It's just a really fascinating. So, these, intestinal surgeries, when you actually remove part of the intestine, they do these really fascinating studies where then you can take the intestine and you put it on the piece of intestine you removed, and you put it on the bench, and it continues to have peristalsis, which is a little creepy, but it has these rhythmical movements of moving food down. It's a natural thing that doesn't require your brain. You have to tell your intestines to do it. It just happens naturally, just like your heart beats naturally. There's these natural rhythms, and you can drip a little peppermint oil on that intestine, and you can actually slow the contractions and relax the contractions. And so for people that have irritable bowel disease, which can involve these kind of spastic contractions of your intestines, peppermint oil can really help relax. And the only caveat is you want these kind of enteric coated peppermint oil, because remember, we don't want to relax the smooth muscle sphincter at the top of our stomach. We can get some reflux if you take peppermint. But they have these special peppermint oil capsules which aren't digested in the stomach. They make it past they make it past the stomach acid, and so then only release the peppermint oil in your intestines, and that's where you want it, so you don't have to worry about reflux.
Perfect. Dr. Greger, what's the truth about GI health?
The truth about GI health is that you got to watch Chef AJ's amazing summit to get all the information about how you can use a plant-based diet to not only live longer, live healthier, but foster the growth of your good bacteria, which determines not only gut health, but health throughout the rest of your body.
Thank you, Dr. Greger.